Why then, from your perspective, is payroll integration so critical for organizations today?
I think if payroll fails just once, people feel it immediately in their pocket. Because from Gartner, 67% of companies sort of have regret around their HCM implementation.
Is how is technology, and doesn't have to be AI, but including AI, transforming the integration management side of things?
Without data, nothing else works. And that's the one big piece of advice I would say it's one of the main takeaways for people today is get your data governance, get your data quality in order, because that is the backbone of everything. Get your house in order, get the foundations in order, and that's going to come back to data.
Keeping businesses thriving, compliance and safe, forecasting strategy, it's all on our mind. It's time payroll took its place in the boardroom to shine.
What does global payroll without borders actually look like in real life? It's one platform handling every country you operate in, real-time insights, automated tax logic, and no messy handoffs between HR, IT, finance, or local vendors. That's what happens when payroll runs on Deal's own global infrastructure. It's faster, it's cleaner, and it's built for teams that need accuracy every single time. See it for yourself at deel.com/Nick Day. Most companies think payroll integration is an IT project. They build it, they test it, they go live, done. But here's the truth that nobody is really saying out loud. Payroll integrations rarely fail on day one. They fail on day 100 or even day 300 or the moment something in the organization changes and suddenly the integration that worked perfectly stops being reliable, compliant or predictable, which is why today's guest, who has actually seen this play out hundreds of times, is going to explain exactly why that happens. I'll introduce today's guest in just a moment, but if you're welcome to the show, if it's your first time here, please do remember to click subscribe and follow. My name is Nick Day. I'm the host of this show and I'm the CEO at JGA Recruitment Group. But most importantly, remember to share this episode with your payroll colleagues and friends so we can really raise the profile of payroll worldwide. And if you want to do even more than that, leave us a 5-star review. Today, we're diving into a topic that nearly every organization underestimates, why HR and payroll integrations become so difficult, not just to implement at the start, but also after they've gone live, what can happen later and what we can do about it if something goes wrong. My guest today is David Docherty, Chief Commercial Officer at Epicenter, a specialist consultancy operating at the intersection of HR, payroll, and enterprise platforms, including Workday, SAP, Oracle, and global payroll vendors. Now, Epicenter are known internationally for stepping in when payroll integrations haven't failed to be built, but have failed to remain reliable, compliant, and predictable as the organization evolves. But they're also right at the precipice of those implementations from the outset as well. So today we're going to be talking about how we can go around a successful implementation, but also how we can make sure they maintain their reliability post go live as well. Dave brings years of hands-on experience across hundreds of real-world deployments, and today he's going to share his secrets about how we can really make sure we undertake a successful implementation project from the start all the way through to 300, 400, 500 days post-implementation as well. So David, welcome to the Payroll Podcast. How are you feeling?
Hey, Nick. Good afternoon. Feeling great. Thanks. Really, really great to be on the show. So thanks for having me on.
No, delighted to have you. And obviously, everyone's always really keen to understand how we should be planning for an implementation, but also how we can make sure it runs successfully post-implementation. So we're going to jump into that in just a moment. Before we do, my first question is this. What does the word payroll mean to you?
Yeah, great question. Well, fundamentally to me, payroll just means the most critical business process. So it's the only one that impacts every employee every week or every month. And to me, it's the one absolute non-negotiable in the HR employee world. I think if payroll fails just once, people feel it immediately in their pockets. And if you fail kind of 2, 3, 4, 5 times, then you pretty much lose credibility with your whole workforce. So I'm not a payroll professional. I should say that up front, but I've been very payroll adjacent throughout my whole career, which is more than 20 years. So for me, I've also always seen payroll as kind of being a byword for complexity and risk when we're talking about wider HR transformation projects. So hopefully now I'm kind of part of the solution to help companies successfully embed payroll in amongst all the rest of their HR technology landscape.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, I think that's really important anyway, because I think I've spoken about this show many times. Payroll is now really the future of payroll is about cross collaboration. It's about integration, not just in terms of systems, but actually how we can work more closely with our HR counterparts, our IT counterparts, and finance and beyond. But let's start with the foundations. Why then, from your perspective, is payroll integration so critical for organizations today?
Yeah, I mean, as I said before, like it's the only process that every employee feels on a regular basis. So getting it right is absolutely imperative. And then you have a scenario where, particularly with multinational companies that we've tended to work with, they may have a global HCM, but payroll still remains very, very local. No one really has that true global payroll solution. So if you have a global HCM, then really payroll integration isn't optional, it becomes a must. And there's a number of reasons why that is. And some of them are obvious and some of them maybe not. Hopefully something new for your listeners. But on the obvious side, I mean, payroll systems need correct data. So if you're mastering data in an HCM system like Oracle or Workday, that data needs to get into payroll. It needs to be accurate so that people can be paid on time. That's a given. Everyone understands that. Sure. When it's done properly, then also it can make things more efficient because you're lowering costs. You don't have manual data entry. You don't have to pay for that labor. You don't have to, and you eliminate some of the risk because you don't have the risk of manual data entry going wrong. On top of that, then you start to get around things like compliance. That's becoming even more important in a post-GDPR era all over the world. I mean, and then you have fewer spreadsheets, fewer emails flying around with data, fewer eyes on data. It's a good thing for compliance. Now, getting into more recent technology discussions, AI is the two letters on everybody's lips every day right now, promising to revolutionize kind of all your business processes. But in order to do that, it needs to have complete and accurate data as the foundation. So if you don't have complete and accurate data synchronized across your technology landscape, then you won't get the benefits of those AI investments. And investments also kind of brings me on to one point, which I think is really often overlooked. And it's something that I talk about a lot. And that is that return on investment across the entire HR and payroll tech stack. So imagine a scenario where, and this probably will be familiar to some people listening, it's certainly familiar to me in my past, is that you spend millions licensing and implementing an HCM, maybe even various payroll systems around the world. And without effective payroll integration, then what happens? Well, the HCM that you've just spent a lot of time on and money on doesn't become the master system of record. It is still treated as the second citizen, if you like, second class citizen, because payroll is what pays people. So local HR and payroll teams will prioritize entering data in the payroll system. And then maybe once a month, they might send a spreadsheet for upload to the central team for the global HCM. So what you risk there is you risk wasting a lot of that investment and not getting the benefit out of it. So while I would say payroll integration delivers value on its own, but it also unlocks the value of everything else around it, all of the other HR and payroll technology investments that you make.
Sure. You mentioned a few things there, synchronization of data being one, because, in the world of recruitment, we're working with clients all over the globe. And it feels like nearly every person I speak to, every payroll director, every payroll leader is going through some level of software transition, integration, project, whatever it might be. So we can see that it's really, really important. Everyone's trying to update their processes, improve their systems, and yet it seems to remain notoriously difficult. We know because we get the projects to support with global transformation consultants and things like that as well. It feels like it's become way more difficult than it used to be, because we're now seeing organizations make one transition and one implementation, and then almost a year later, we're often seeing them change again. So is that down to that synchronization of data? Is that, what are some of the reasons you're seeing behind those constant changes?
Yeah, I mean, there's a really good stat I read recently. I think it was from Gartner, that I think 67% of companies sort of have regret around their HCM implementation. And they don't get the value from it that they hoped they would get basically at the start of that journey. And integration is cited as a really big factor in that. And I think that does then drive people to go and look at other technologies. Like, you can have one HCM system or one payroll, and and you might think that that's not operating correctly. Maybe the blame goes against that, but that might not be your problem. The problem might be related to processes. It might be related to data governance, or it might be related to the fact that the integrations are not effective. And then you just think you're not getting the value from those systems. So I think, in this day and age, there's a lot of best of breed applications, and that's great. That is probably the way to go. If you can integrate those correctly within your network, within your landscape, then I think that will really resolve many of the issues that you can face, and it might stop you from thinking that you've bought the wrong technology.
Sure. So if I'm listening to this right now, then I'm maybe planning on a complete software change, or maybe I've already started planning the process. At what point would you recommend someone potentially does get involved with an integration partner? And if they don't, if they don't want to do that, what are the kind of steps you'd recommend they started to take to I guess try and increase the chances of a successful project?
Yeah, very early stage. I think when you buy the technology and when you're also looking at your typical system integrator that's going to help you implement your HCM or your payroll, I think you look at a lot of the processes, you look a lot at the user interface, you look a lot at some of the features and functionality and now the AI magic that's built within it. But I think some of the foundational elements are not considered early enough. And those two are data and integration, because without data, nothing else works. And that's the one big piece of advice I would say. It's one of my main takeaways to people today is get your data governance, get your data quality in order, because that is the backbone of everything. You can have the best system in the world, the best processes in the world, the best shared service organization in the world. But if you don't have solid data, then it won't mean anything. So get these two topics on the table. Integration in particular, as well as data, integration is also treated as a bit of a sideshow. It's the bit on the edge that, yeah, we know we need to do that, but really it's just a technical thing. We just get some smart people to code some integrations and away you go. That's not the focus for us. Well, actually, you should be bringing that onto the table, and it should have the same level of importance. Have those conversations early, plan for it early, have a good solid integration strategy. And I can promise you that you will get much more benefit out of your overall implementation if you can start considering that early.
Are there any kind of common other mistakes that companies make in terms of either during or at the beginning of the process or even after? Because I know from my side of the fence, when I speak to directors and payroll leaders, often I'll hear things like, well, there wasn't enough defined ownership, or there was some over customization done, or maybe there's even misaligned data models, things like that. I just wonder if there's any sort of common mistakes that, people listening to this now and they don't want to fall into those traps. Maybe we can help them that kind of sits outside of the data landscape.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's something you mentioned in your introduction that actually really home to me is that payroll integration is treated as an IT project, and it's not. It's a business critical risk project, and that's how you should be thinking about it. So first mistake that we see is actually people don't bring it to the table early enough, which we just mentioned before. Second mistake is that it's treated purely as a technical exercise, but in reality, it's a wider project. It's about creating a harmonized, accurate data landscape everywhere. So data ownership and governance, which I already mentioned as well. Using standard interfaces that are not necessarily fit for purpose. Now, payroll integration is often sold as being quite straightforward, but it's not necessarily the case. And actually, the vast majority of these integration projects will experience trouble and may fail. And part of that can be if you're trying to use kind of standardized interfaces or standard that have been sold by vendors, and maybe standard integration technology that you will have within your HCM. Now, they can be quite limited, very, very basic. They will not necessarily meet all of the different requirements, especially when you get kind of off the happy path. These kind of interfaces and solutions have their place for sure, but they're definitely not fit for everyone. So I'd urge people to do their due diligence on that. Check what your requirements are, see what those standard integration solutions can offer, and then from there you can decide if that's going to be a fit for you. Incompatible data models. I think there's a bit of a natural conflict, sort of HCM being global, standardized processes. Payroll is still very, very hyper-local. And that incompatibility sort of stretches into integration. Data is stored in HCM in a certain way, and in different payroll systems, it's stored somewhere completely different. So some things very easy, like my first name, David, last name, Docherty, that's not going to change. But things like dates attached to my record, retroactive future data transactions, if I have multiple jobs in the organization, all those different kind of things, those are things that are not treated the same in your HCM and in all of your different payroll systems. That complexity pervades right way through your integrations. And it also creates a dependency on everything else that you do. So you need to have your HCM that's set up and ready. You need to have your payroll vendors need to be ready to participate, vendor engagement, and then come back again to data. So that difference between the data models, I think, is not really appreciated. Then it comes back to also being a technical exercise, as we already said, but then you get into really overcomplicating how you go about building that. So if you find enough smart people, you can build whatever you like. You can build an incredibly complex interface that will cater for every what if scenario, very, very detailed. And that's fantastic. But then after that, you've got to live with what you build. And that's a really big mistake that we see people making, is investing a lot in a very complex solution that then they can't maintain. And then when you get to day 50, day 100, 2 years on, then you really get into problems because no one understands how to maintain it and no one knows how to upgrade it and change it when you need to.
Yeah, I've heard actually quite a few payroll leaders talk to me about that exact problem. And you mentioned earlier as well, and one of the things perhaps is overlooked, it shouldn't be, is the ROI question, making sure that we're building something that does deliver a good return on investment in terms of what we're trying to achieve. You talked a little bit about data, about standardization, about governance, but obviously you've delivered hundreds of integrations, right? So maybe I'll ask two questions here and I'll let you choose which way you answer them. But the first would be, have you got any sort of really good case studies of where you've seen an organization deliver fantastic return on investment because they have put these processes in right? They did get the data correctly in the first place. They did have the governance, the standardization that you need. And I guess the second thing is, if you're a payroll leader that perhaps is looking to secure the investment to even undertake the implementation or transitional change, what are the kind of things that we want to take to, the C-suite or the board and say, look, we want to go through this process because this is the ROI potentially we can look to expect or experience if we get this right?
Yeah. So the answer to your first question is yes, we have seen that. Not too often, honestly. Most of our customers end up coming to us because they have struggled to implement successful integration, and they've had to take a different direction. What really works when customers work with us is when they pay attention to that data. Generally, we'll take care of the integration piece, but if they can take care of their HCM setup and they can take care of their data, then that is always the most successful. We recently had a really big go live for one of our biggest clients, actually, across Asia, Middle East, and some other countries as well. And it was one of the smoothest go lives we've had in terms of the interfaces. And big driver of that, obviously, the quality of the interfaces we built are great. But the other big driver to that is that they took the attention and put that attention on their data, really focused on it, and really delivered. They really listened to that message all the way through. And that eliminated the majority of errors that we typically see on a go live. It made a really huge difference. And we were all really kind of surprised and very impressed and very pleased that it went that direction. The other direction is a combination of, where I've seen unsuccessful ones in the past, is generally where the data is not taken into consideration. The technical solution is not been up to scratch. And then I've seen the different way that can go, which is interfaces being deployed and then switched off after a couple of weeks because it just creates more errors and creates more problems than it's worth. That's one of the reasons why I ended up joining Epicenter, because it was off the back of a project like that, where I saw Epicenter come in and change it and fix it.
So I do know we get a lot of questions from the leaders, who are keen to sort of secure the investment for bringing an integration partner in like yourself. They want to get it right. But sometimes, unfortunately, payroll is one of the departments that often the most forgotten about and find it harder to secure investment than maybe some of their counterparts do. They have to really create robust business studies and ROI documents to say, look, we need to do this. We need to improve and modernize our payroll solutions. We've got global payrolls. Maybe we didn't have those only a few years ago. So what are the kind of things that you would recommend they kind of put into that document or that presentation to board if they want to work with a partner like yourselves and they want to make sure they get that right in the kind of language that a board would listen to?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think I would probably start with a stat like I gave earlier, that the majority of these HR system implementation projects don't necessarily deliver the value that have been promised, and the reasons why that's happened. Sure. So I think that's a good starting point. You don't want to be in that group. You want to be in the group that's successful and sees value from it. And after that, I would be looking at the ROI of those integrations. So what we do with our customers is that we'll take a look at the integrations they have, what the cost of that integration would be for implementation and run over a period of time. And then we will take that against the cost of manual data updates, and that cost of labor and error rates and that kind of thing. And then we'll look at that side by side. And from there, we can drive a really good ROI discussion of, if you do these 10 countries, these 15 countries, that's going to be a big ROI. Then others, maybe there's some different decisions to be made. And then also on top of that, presenting what happens if you get this wrong. It's on the critical path. It's a big dependency for the success of any of these global HCM implementations. And what happens if you get this piece wrong? If you get this piece wrong, does it mean that you delay your go live? What does it cost you if you're going to delay your go live 6 months because your integrations aren't ready? So I think those are the kind of things I would take into those discussions, and really reiterate the priority of getting that right.
Sure. I think the other thing that I would probably put out there, and I'd be interested to get your response on this, when we see implementations going, often clients are led by the partner they've chosen. Obviously, I've seen that in my introduction, you work with many of the major vendors out there, Workday, SAP, I think with a couple of others that we mentioned. But often if it's completely led by one partner, it can be very difficult for the in-house payroll leader to understand whether they're taking the right direction. You can almost be, you spend so much money, you can be led very much by the partner that's delivering the platform. So I'd always say, look, it's really good to have someone on your side of the fence, someone that can manage both sides, that can support the integration with the knowledge and expertise of how these platforms work. Is that the kind of work you also often get involved in, kind of being that support mechanism for the payroll leaders that want to make sure that they are getting the best, the best value out of the vendors they've selected, rather than being led on a journey that I'm sure the vendors have the best interest at heart, but at the same time may not necessarily take in the direction that you anticipated?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that comes from the experience. It's not something we set out to do, but it's something that we now do end up doing a lot for our customers. That happens in a couple of ways. I think the vendors that they work with, one of the big ones, or any of the HCM vendors out there, payroll vendors, and indeed all of the system integrators, they will all have the best interests of the customer at heart. Everyone wants to have a successful project and a successful long-term relationship. But as I said earlier, I think integration is treated as a bit of a sideshow. So it's not something that's discussed at the table. And all due respect to those companies, it's not the focus for any of those companies. So for us, this is our absolute niche. It's the one thing that we do, and the one thing that we really push the value of. And so being able to have that conversation, use our experience to guide, having done hundreds of integrations and projects, we know exactly what makes them successful. We know what makes them fail, and we know how to navigate our customers through that. And that can come through project planning, playing different ways, and come through prioritization. Multinationals may have 50,000 employees, 100,000 employees, but they may be concentrated in some key locations. They may have locations with 10 people in it. Am I going to tell them to build an interface for 10 people? Probably not, because the value isn't there. So helping them prioritize, helping them plan, sometimes helping them select vendors, right? They'll come to us and say, we're looking at this, we're looking at global payroll, or looking at a new vendor in this country or a new vendor in this region, or which ones have you integrated with in the past? Which ones do you have good experiences with? Because once they've worked with us for a while, they understand the value of what that brings, and they start to use that to shortlist some of these vendors. Then on top of that, because now we have a number of multinational customers that work with us, we've built a network, right? So our customers can come to us and say, we're looking at global payroll, looking at ADP, and I can point them to a customer that's gone down that road, or has thought about going down that road. Maybe they decided against going to global payroll for some reason. Maybe they decided to go ahead with it. Maybe they decided to consolidate in a particular country or region, and we can start introducing them to our customer network as well. And that also adds a lot of value, I think, to people to be able to speak to people who have been down that path.
I think that's a really, really interesting point. I run a number of sort of senior leadership sort of payroll WhatsApp groups across the globe. And actually one of the most common questions we get in there is asking for advice, because it's hard to understand which the best platform is when you're just dealing with the sales teams. They are well trained across these vendors. They know how to deliver a good proposition. When everything sounds rosy, sometimes you do want a little bit more insight, or you want to work with a partner or sort of leverage the experience of a partner like yourselves to say, actually, in your experience, which has worked well based on our unique payroll. We know that different solutions for different payrolls often work better or different depending what you're looking to try and do. So I think that's really interesting as a question that you get. What are the other kind of common questions you get from payroll leaders and that do come into you? I mentioned in the introduction that you support clients both at the beginning of an implementation. You mentioned there you might map out the kind of vendors they may want to select, but also you also support at the other end, when maybe they've implemented and we're 100 days into the implementation and for whatever reason it's not working out as they planned. What does that first call sound like? What's the main, the first reason they might pick up the phone and give you guys a call to see if you can help?
Yeah. I think for us, the most common entry into a conversation for us is that, a customer may have spent 6 months in trying to deploy integrations and they're not getting the results that they want. Now, they could be in the testing phase, they could be in the build phase, they could also be live for 6 months and it's just not getting the results they want. And they'll come to us and ask, okay, we've been recommended to you, or we found you. What is it that we've done? Why haven't we been successful with this? That's really the most common one we get. I would say from our perspective, it's at the start of the journey. If you don't know what you're getting into, it's hard to know the risks and issues you're going to face. So we can talk to customers before and say, we think you should do this, and we think you would need on benefit from our services. But they might say, well, actually, we don't really think we need that because we have an HCM, we have payroll, we have an internal team integrations, we have this, that, and that's fine. And it's really hard to kind of persuade people otherwise. Unfortunately, it tends to be easier to articulate that once they've been through that. So I think sometimes you have to live through that to be able to really understand what the pitfalls are. And then that's when they kind of go and seek the advice of a specialist like us.
Attention payroll leaders. If you're listening to this, you already know that payroll has never been more complex. Compliance risks are rising, skilled talent is scarce, and getting it wrong can cost your business way more than just money. It can cost you trust, retention, and of course, brand reputation. I'm Nick Day, host of this show and also CEO of JGA Recruitment Group, specialist global payroll recruiters. Here at JGA, we're so passionate about payroll, we've even turned it into music. Don't believe us? Head to your favorite audio platform and search for Payroll Powers the World, and you can quite literally join us in song about how we believe payroll deserves its moment in the boardroom to shine. At JGA, we'd like to think our passion shines through to our recruitment results as well. With a 97% retention rate and an average 19-day job brief to hire success rate, we work fast, we work strategically, and we work with purpose to connect you to the hidden payroll talent that job ads and direct search methods will simply never reach. So if you're hiring or indeed planning to hire, why not partner with the experts that are shaping the future of payroll? Partner with jgarecruitment.com today, or better yet, drop me a message directly, and together we can make sure your next payroll hire is your best one yet. I think it's difficult. You mentioned the two letters that everyone's talking about, AI. It's difficult to have a conversation on implementation and integration without AI coming into it. I think there's, again, two elements to what I'd like to understand for our listeners. The first is, how is technology, and doesn't have to be AI, but including AI, transforming the integration management side of things? I know I've seen things like AI-powered mapping and other bits and pieces that might be of interest. But secondly, in terms of what our listeners are trying to get out of it, when they're implementing new systems now, they want to have that AI capability built in. They're trying to understand, is this a solution that's going to give us the AI features we need in the future? And one of the things we're getting back in terms of feedback is they're implementing systems that may or may not have the AI capability, but they haven't had the resource yet to get the ROI to go back there again, to be able to understand how to get the best use out of the AI capability the system gets. It's implemented, it's gone, and maybe the software vendor hasn't got enough people on the bench to be able to really guide them through that. So I'm interested to know how AI is impacting both the integration management side of things from your side, but also what we can do to help our listeners make sure they're leveraging the AI within their own existing platforms or new platforms as well.
Yeah, I mean, I can talk to so how we see integration influencing, AI and technology in general influencing integration over the next few years. But before that, I think I'll come back to data. If you want to be able to leverage AI, it's like everything in the last 15, 20 years. Any innovation that's happened in HR systems, payroll systems, to cloud technology, it's all driven by data, whether it's skills, talent, recruiting, it's all driven by data, and AI is no different. If you want to get the insights from AI, the data has to be there. And then there are some fantastic tools out there. Now, integration, where we see this, at the moment, it's still, firstly, integration, even with AI, right? The start point and end point is the same. right? It doesn't suddenly become sexier. It's still, you've got data here and you've got data on the other side. And a system on the other side that needs that data, and you're going to send it and it's going to receive it in a certain format. Right? It's not too much I can do to dress that up any nicer than that. But how we get there is certainly something that AI can help with, and we're pretty excited by that. So let me go through a few things where I think this is going to make a difference. And where I'll start is by saying that the majority of work on a payroll integration project is not building an interface. That for us is a fraction of the work that we do. It's mostly the coordination around it that's needed. So when I talk about what we're going to do, where we think this should go, I'm going to be talking about that whole kind of end-to-end process, not just the integration itself. So where we're moving towards is we would love to see a scenario where we're able to go into a workshop with customers, and we're able to, AI is going to be able to process the outcomes of that workshop. It's then going to be able to document requirements, mapping. We're going to have details that we have from the vendor on the import requirements that they have, whether it's APIs or a file, whatever it may be. And then we're going to be able to, so firstly, we're going to be able to play that back super easily to our customers. Then we're going to be able to take that information, feed it into our integration application, and we're going to be able to automatically generate a configuration of that interface. So you can almost go from workshop to working prototype very, very, very quickly, which is really cool.
Wow. Yeah.
And then from there, then we can build in some automated testing and so on as well. So what we're trying to do is just trying to make each step of this integration journey a lot quicker and easier. So you kind of get the same outcome at the end, ideally a better outcome, but really the same one, but you might get more consistency, more repeatability with this, but the same outcome, but you're going to get it for, with less effort, more consistency. And ultimately you're going to be able to do it faster. And that's going to cost less money. And that in turn is going to open it up to make it available to more and more companies. I mentioned earlier, return on investment. I'll keep coming back to that, but sometimes the return on investment isn't there for integrations. The more technology can come in and support this process, then the price can come down a bit. And we think the return on investment will be there, for a much wider population and more countries, more companies.
Yeah. Amazing.
Once you've got that, once the interface is live, then AI is, you already see AI monitoring. It's already going to be on there, and we're going to start to see much more around sort of predictive error detection, kind of knowing that maybe a certain time of the month or a certain particular point in the year, or maybe a certain interface may cause problems, or you may see you're getting much more data in from the HCM system, and then you can kind of automatically, smartly schedule around that, to account for those things, rather than it being human driven, because obviously a system is on 24/7 and it can spot things that humans can't necessarily spot. So I think we'll see better monitoring in that regard. And then on the support side as well, because I think that's super important, of being able to manage what you live with what you build. As I said earlier, we're going to be automatically prioritizing, get AI assisted resolution of tickets based on, for us, we can base this on the history of all of the interfaces that we have and all of the tickets that we've ever processed for any of our customers. That we're able to train AI on that, and that will really be quite powerful, I think, in enabling our support teams and support agents to get to that fix much quicker than they can today. So I think really the outcome of that is going to be a couple of things, which is firstly, hopefully a supercharged implementation, and the second is going to be smoother operations when it's live as well. And that all comes back again to the ROI. And I think getting that same outcome, but in a better way, and delivering more ROI is going to make those projects run smoother, quicker, and make those board conversations we talked about much easier as well, when you can present a much better case for that return on investment.
Yeah, I mean, some of those outcomes you've just mentioned are really intelligent and not things that we, I think people would have dreamed of only a few years ago. I know it still goes back to the adage now, if you want to get the best out of AI, it's kind of good data in, good data out, bad data in, bad data out. So we've got to get that bit right. But the idea of having software that can predictively spot errors, that can give you end-to-end visibility in a world that's obsessed with transparency, that can give you intelligent, failure triage and things like that on the customer service side. These are all things that payroll leaders are really, really keen to bring into their organizations to help them with the insights and with the compliance and with the accuracy that does start to move the needle if they want to become more strategic and more visible in their organizations, which kind of brings us more to the future, really. Because when we talk about Epicenter, for those that are listening, maybe they're not familiar with Epicenter at the moment, you are, of course, an HR and payroll integration as a service provider, but you do say on your website, you're not just another system integrator. You're a leading global specialist in enterprise HR and payroll integrations. We've already talked about some of your AI-driven technologies, the ongoing support services you provide. But I wonder if you can tell us a little bit more about Epicenter for those that perhaps haven't come across your organization before. They're intrigued about some of the answers you've given today and want to find a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to do that. And, Nick, that AI roadmap, I probably wouldn't have dreamed of that even 12 months ago.
No.
But if we have this conversation again in 12 months, I think it'll probably be even different again. So maybe we need to do that. But yeah, about Epicenter. So yeah, very focused HR technology and services company. We only really do HCM and payroll integrations. We don't implement HCM systems. We don't implement payroll applications either. We just do the integrations. So I always kind of describe this as being, we do the dirty work that no one else really wants to do. But it's also the essential work that kind of keeps things moving as it should. It's like the referee in a football match or something where, you don't notice them when they work well, but when they don't work well, then you really, really notice them.
Yeah.
So we're headquartered in Europe, but we have people in about 14, 15 countries across the world. And the reason we have quite a diverse group of people is because we serve multinational organizations. So we integrate their core HCM, whether it be Oracle, Workday, SuccessFactors, within the rest of their system landscape. And payroll is absolutely the biggest requirement we have. It's the biggest value add we have because it's the hardest integration you can do. And our whole kind of reason for existing is to eliminate risk for our customers. My career implementing payroll HCM projects, integration has always been a big stumbling block. That's the thing we're trying to eliminate. Let us take on the risk. We know exactly how to make this work. We'll help you succeed, and ideally take that away. And how we do that, we do that three ways, three parts to that service. One is, I think I mentioned earlier, we have an integration app called Fit for Cloud. That serves as our integration hub, where you basically kind of configure and manage all the interfaces you have. There's no coding involved in that, which is really important. Secondly, the experience that we have of implementing interfaces all around the world. And then we don't just build those integrations, we take responsibility for them afterwards. So we provide ongoing support under an SLA via our global support desk, and really giving our customers peace of mind on their HCM and payroll integrations.
Yeah, fantastic. I love the idea that I love it. I think it's really important that you focus on risk, you focus on the elements that people don't necessarily want to get involved in, right? But that's often where the errors sit. We overlook it. We want the bells and whistles of what AI can do, and we want these nice looking dashboards of our new software provider. But again, if you don't get that data bit right, you don't get the integration bit right, you're never going to get the pretty bit right at the end. And that's really, really important. And I think it's a really good point. People are really keen as well to improve compliance as they're moving into, maybe they've got domestic payroll now, but there's a good chance payroll will be global in the future. So I think that's really interesting as well. So
absolutely. It's the backbone. And I feel like just, in my previous experience, it's always felt like it's an accepted risk. It's accepted that it's hard, that it's technical, that you have to have serious coders and it will take time and it will cost a ton of money. It's almost like it's been a given. And I like to think that we're helping to change that perception, and deliver much better results without having to go through that heartache.
So that leads me to my next question, really, and you've led me there really nicely, because I want to know what's changing in how companies really think about integrations. I think based on everything you've seen, how is the mindset around HR and payroll integrations changing globally? Because we're seeing so many projects not go perhaps the way they had wanted them to in the past. Has that started to change the mindset for organizations? Are they starting to think more proactively now around integrations, whereas perhaps they didn't before?
To an extent, I think I see integrations on the table a bit more and a bit earlier than I used to. And I see that come up in conversation, and a lot of companies have been investing in standardized integrations, like I mentioned earlier, to make that process easier. So I do think there's definitely a more recognition of the importance of this than there was maybe 10 years ago. But I don't think it's there enough yet. I still think it's considered a bit of an afterthought. And while that tide is changing, and hopefully it'll change even more, hopefully, even if this can persuade one person to think more about integration than they did before, then I'll be very happy. So yeah, I think it is shifting, but slowly. I think what else is shifting is customers looking at trying to simplify things a little bit. There's so many applications out there now, so many payroll providers out there now. What we see a fair bit of is an attempt to consolidate. I mentioned earlier where HCM has kind of moved towards being more global standard. Payroll is still hyper local. There's definitely a move to consolidate happening in the market, and I think a lot of the really great cloud digital native providers that have sprung up in the last number of years, I think are helping drive that innovation. So even some of the bigger legacy companies are also innovating off the back of that to kind of keep up or stay ahead. So yeah, I definitely see a shift change in people wanting to make this easier. But there's a long way to go, because I think that the complex web of payroll systems and HR systems that companies have is a result of so much legacy activity of local decision making, of mergers and acquisitions. And we sometimes discuss with companies and they've got 5 payrolls in one country. There might only be 100 people on each of them. And like, well, okay, but that's because they went and bought another, 3 or 4 other companies, and they've inherited this large volume of systems. So there's a lot to unpick there, I think, before we get there. And I think in many cases, what you probably won't get to that perfect utopia of having the single greenfield perfect payroll landscape and HR system landscape, but you can get closer to it. And I think you can do that by smart consolidation. So if you want to consolidate, you don't have to consolidate to, okay, we need one provider everywhere. You don't need to do that. One thing we're seeing a lot more of now is with large companies is they won't touch the payroll in the super big locations. They'll leave that alone, and that's smart because it's a lot to take that away and replace it, introduce a lot of unnecessary risk. But in smaller countries, they may have 20, 30 smaller countries with fewer than 500 people in each of them. So there, you have a much better opportunity because it's much easier to manage that change and consolidate to a global provider when you're in that, for that sort of suite of people and suite of countries that you have. And from there, you can much more easily integrate your entire population with your HCM. So what happens with us a lot is we'll have companies and we might integrate the top 10, 12, 15 countries. That will give them 85 to 90% of their population integrated. But the rest of it, there's no, I'll come back to ROI. Sorry, those three letters again. Your listeners will be sick of me saying it. But maybe a wise man once told me you have to repeat something 8 times for people to really hear it and understand it. So maybe I've hit the 8. But you won't have that return when you're building custom integrations for small populations. If you can consolidate to one of these providers that has a common integration layer, common front end, and then you end up with a bit of a hybrid of having that for your smaller countries, and then you keep the local payrolls and your big ones, then suddenly you're in a position where you do have the ability to get a return on investment to integrate your entire population. And that means you've got a single source of data entry for your whole employee population. It's going to flow through to all of your payrolls. You can even bring that data, some of that key data, back from your disparate payrolls back into your HCM, which we do a lot of as well. And then you've got the platform there for your global reporting. You can get your AI driven, analytics and smart decision making coming off the back of that as well. And that, to me, I think is the key to success, like smartly consolidating instead of kind of trying to really go 100% down a particular path.
Yeah, perfect. Sounds like a really good way to round off before we open the payroll vault. I think also I can call on our listeners here in the Payroll Podcast. If you know someone who's going through an implementation, maybe they're thinking about it, maybe they've already gone through it and aren't getting the results they wanted, this is an opportunity to share this episode with those colleagues and listen to it back. You don't necessarily have to go with Epicenter. Clearly they give an integration solution here, but it sounds like if you're not thinking about this, it may cause you problems later. You may not get the ROI, as they've mentioned, that you're really looking for. So please do share the episode, make comments on LinkedIn. Let's get the message out there, because if this is going to help raise the profile of payroll, if we're going to experience more ROI on the back end, if we're going to have more successful implementation projects happening on the back end as well, then this makes sense. So really do that. Let's help our colleagues out. Let's help everyone out and really help them with their projects. It actually reminded me of the 80-20 principle as well, the Pareto's law. The idea being you want your 80% of your population really only to be taking up 20% of your time. And if you get that bit right, brilliant. Now you can really start working on strategy, on insights, and moving the needle. If it's taking up all of your time, it's not working correctly, you'll always be stuck in the tools. So I think some really, really credible, brilliant advice you've given today, David. And thank you actually for focusing on OI. I think it's really important. And this is how we move payroll from cost center to value driver, get people thinking strategically about their solutions. I think that's really, really critical.
Yeah, very happy to be the evangelist for integration ROI. One piece of advice I've been given at the start of my career. I think no one else is going to look out for your career as much as you are. So you always have to, you own the direction of your career. And it's up to you to go in.
Fantastic. If you could give payroll leaders one piece of advice for 2026, what would it be?
I would say, there's so much opportunity out there with the technology available to you now. But get your house in order, get the foundations in order, and that's going to come back to data, like I mentioned before.
What's one thing organizations then should do differently if they want HR payroll integrations that don't fall apart after they've gone live?
Yeah, I think don't over complicate it, and don't treat it purely as a technical exercise.
Sage advice, fantastic. And last but by no means least, a little bit of fun for you. If payroll was a song, a movie, or a book, or even a quote, what would it be and why?
I think if it was a song or a movie or a book, maybe it'd be Pulp Fiction, because the story it's never a linear story, and it always jumps around and goes in different directions.
Bit of Quentin Tarantino. Fantastic. Well, look, David, it's been a really brilliant conversation. I really hope it's going to move the needle for people that, I either really want to make sure they deliver a successful project, or if those are struggling to know where to go if they want to get it back on track. It's been a practical, honest, and really, I would say, advice has been deeply needed in a world where most organizations underestimate the complexity of HR payroll integrations. Let's be honest. I think for listeners that do want to learn more about David and the work that Epicenter do, please do look at the show notes. There will be a link directly through to the website, which is epicenter.eu. There'll also be a link to David's LinkedIn profile as well. If you enjoyed this episode, please remember to subscribe and follow us. If you're watching us on YouTube, remember to leave us a comment as well, or leave us a 5-star review on your favorite podcast platform. But most importantly, I think today, if perhaps more than ever, share this episode with your payroll colleagues and friends. Let's make sure we can all start to run more successful projects because we get the foundations right. So David, I want to give you one more huge thank you for joining me today on the Payroll Podcast. I've been your host. My name is Nick Day. I look forward to bringing the next episode real soon. David, thank you.
Thanks so much, Nick. Have a great day.
Deals, the global platform built for complexity. From payslips, benefits, and compliance in over 150 countries, Deals centralizes everything in one secure workflow. Plus, real-time visibility across your entire workforce. No fragmented systems, no chasing local vendors. Just accurate, compliant pay delivered on time, every time. See why more than 40,000 businesses trust Deal. Visit DEEL.com/NickDay to book your demo. That's DEEL.com/NickDay.